Welcome to Rock and Roll Fridays, a podcast on musical encounters
Welcome
and
to
life.
Rock and Roll Fridays, and I'm so happy to have a guest, very cool guest this week, Michael Beckridge, who is CEO of York Analytical Laboratories, and we're going to talk a little bit about that because that's really important, and we'll get into that, and we're going to talk about some of the projects Michael has going on and a very, very cool music story. So welcome to Rock and Roll Fridays, Mike.
Thank you, Mike. Glad to
All
be
right.
here. Talking music is my favorite thing, brother.
Yeah, talking music. So let's start with, you're the CEO of an analytical laboratory company, which most people would say, wow, that's really boring and it's a really boring industry. But I know you personally that you involve music, entertainment, sound into your brand and into your employees. And it's something that is pretty different that I've seen in quote corporate America. What kind of made you do that? What are some of the projects that you've combined music and your brand with? And can you talk a little bit about the importance of that for you as a leader and also your employees?
So my father started the company 40 years ago. I'm not a chemist. We are the largest environmental laboratory in greater New York City. We have 100 employees and 1,000 clients. And for me, I used to work at Johnson & Johnson and Pfizer, and I learned that music was such a relationship builder. So when I got to York, we spent tens of thousands of dollars on Ranger tickets, Yankee tickets, and you go to a game, you spend a ton of money, and you don't really get to talk. So I got rid of all of them and started asking clients what is their favorite band and taking them to a show. So you take a client to a show and all of a sudden it's the best experience they've ever had.
Yeah.
So I also write a music column. So I have press credentials. So for my bigger clients, I would ask them who's their favorite band when they come into town. I try to get backstage passes. So it's a very memorable experience. I also find when you can connect with somebody about music, it's a deeper connection. It's a lasting connection, which is what any business wants. At the end of the day, we're a service business. I'm a fancy plumbing company with lots of instrumentation, heavy regulation, and getting to know people is crazy important. I mean, I change the hold music every week. I do it from my own computer.
Yeah.
And just that little thing is a touch point for people. So it's not only with clients, but also my staff. You know, talking music and bringing people out is a great thing. You know, if you ask someone what kind of music they like, you kind of know a little bit about them. If somebody says, well, what's ever on the radio, I'm like, that guy's got no soul. But
right. Or the I don't really like music. It's like, wow, you have so, you know, and I've come across a couple of those, or I don't care about music, right? So that's really cool.
Amazing uniter. So
and it's amazing, you know, because you're a CEO running a large company, lots of pressure, lots of responsibilities, but you've also had the time and did it and started it a long time ago. And I urge everyone to check it out. Thunderbird Ranch Ramble.
All right.
Is a music blog. Talk to us about that, because it's really impressive. It's deep and it's great writing.
So I started writing about music when I was in college. I went to Villanova. I started the entertainment section as a way to get free tapes, cassettes, and CDs and tickets. And after school, I kept writing on the side. And when the platform came out to write a blog, I transferred it over there. It was a way for me to share my thoughts and talk music with people. I lived out in California for a while. So I would write out there, post it, and I would share it with people all over. So I've been writing this now for about 20 years. And I basically write 3 or 4 stories a month, all about music. And it's become an absolute passion for me. Now, I always thought that I would either play professional baseball or be a professional musician. I didn't do either, but I have figured out a way to make music part of my life, even though it's not my job. And it's insanely satisfying.
Yeah. And also, the thing about the perspective when writing, the perspective reading about music, and learning about music, and when we talked about meeting people and asking what their favorite band is, right? When you hear bands or artists that you don't know about and you discover new things, it's such a great experience, whether that's
Paying it
for
forward, man.
referral or reading something online, or the Spotify algorithms, like just this discovery of music. And when people like yourself write about a band and is passionate about a band, it makes other people want to kind of gravitate and find out what's going on there.
When COVID hit, I lost my outlet to talk music with people because I would go to shows all the time. I live near the Capitol Theater, so I'd be at the Cap 3-4 times a month, and I would see people and talk music. COVID happened, all of a sudden I'm in my bubble. It's me and my stack of CDs and my guitar. And so I created a new project called the Music People Project, where I started to have one-on-one sessions and talk music and record it with people that I love. It was a way for them to also pay it forward and to talk about the person that that influenced their music the most, and whether it's an older brother or a friend.
Yeah.
And it just became another labor of love. So I've kind of molded these two projects together, and again, it's a way for me to stay connected to the music. I don't gamble. I don't watch ESPN. Is my thing. So it has been the backbone of my entire life, for sure.
And the Music People Project, I mean, during that COVID, during the time you were interviewing people, I mean, it was probably a lot of therapy for people just to talk about themselves, talk about creative things, to talk about things they love, people they love, experiences. And the great thing about it is these are, quote, normal people, but their stories really come out. And like music, like life, it's all about storytelling. If you can't tell a good story, no one really wants to hang out with you. So the cool thing about the Music People Project, it's about ordinary, regular people telling their story.
Yeah. And all of these people have a theme. You're either a music person or you're not. And it doesn't make you a bad person if you don't like music, but your soul may not be as big. Let's just say that.
Right.
And I've passed this on to my kids as well. My oldest daughter is a senior at Fairfield, and she runs the radio station. And she has become a music fanatic. All of my kids have. So it's like a really nice way to connect. Yeah. It's a connector for sure. And as I interview people, I find there's a theme through all of the interviews. They use different words, but it means the same thing. It's a soundtrack to people's life. It's a way to have expression with good, bad, and it's again, it's such a connector to people. Yeah. There's definitely some healing magic power in music, for sure.
And I mean, I've talked about it before. I mean, I've gone to plenty of shows alone, and it's a great experience. But when you go with your people and something's going on, and you turn to the left and you turn to the right, and there's just joy and dancing, right? I always, equate live music to dancing, which I think back in the day, there was a spirituality to it. There was a healing power to music, going back forever. And I think those things still exist today. It's just that connection, with people when you go to a show or you're listening to music. And then to your earlier point about, how deep can you go, right? When people are into bands and they're talking about notes or solos or intros or outros and how they form these sounds, it gets pretty cool. So
I'm just going back out to live music. In the last month, I saw Gary Clark Jr., which was insane, Jason Isbell, and the Black Crowes. All three great shows. I went with friends and clients, and it was a huge connector to people, for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, let's talk about, obviously the premise of my show is these musical encounters and run-ins, and you've got a great one. And I always say, educate people who these artists are, right? That I always say to people, like, tell your story, but if people don't know who they are, go check them out. You might get turned on to a new sound, or go down that chain of like, oh, that, what I love is, oh, that guitar player played with that band just for one tour, and that those solos were great. Who is that guy? And then you find out he's got his own album going and his own band going, and it kind of just grows, how you find people. So you, I want to make sure I'm pronouncing this correctly. Is it Jorm and the Fur Peace Ranch?
Jorma Kaukonen. Hot tuna, baby. I pulled out my hot tuna hat, which Jorma signed on the top. But when I went to college, I got introduced to hot tuna by a harmonica player. Again, I never heard of them, and I got hooked immediately.
Yeah.
So I didn't know for quite some time that Jorma was the guitar player in Jefferson Airplane, and he was at Woodstock. He had been this magical guitar player, and he and the bass player Jack Cassidy went off and created Hot Tuna. And I have always adored Jorma, his playing, his style, just the feeling that he gave, very, very authentic. And in April of 2014, I fulfilled a dream of mine, which was to go take lessons from him at his house in Ohio. So I sent in a tape, I got accepted, I jumped in my car, I drove 10 hours, and he had a small group of people, 12 people, come to his ranch, and he would teach you over a 4-day period.
Oh, wow. Oh, so this wasn't just one session. This was...
Oh, no, this was a 4-day, 3-night thing. You stay in his house, his wife cooks you breakfast. So it was a very full day. So you would work with him one-on-one, you'd work in a group, you had an opportunity to perform for him, he'd give you some feedback. But the best part of it was at night, when you would be able to roam around his property. He actually had like this, I'll call it like a game room or an entertainment hut in the middle of the farm. And it was like filled with windows. And at night, I was kind of strolling around, and I walked in. It was the only one there. And I started opening up these cardboard boxes, and they were filled with photos, his photos, and books and memorabilia. And I'm looking through these Polaroid photos of him and the guys from the band and hanging out in Woodstock. And
oh, geez.
He comes in, he walks in, and, I hear him there. He's like, "Is there anybody in here?" I was like, yeah. And he sat down and talked with me for like a half hour. That was so awesome and memorable. I'm a huge band fan, the band.
Yeah.
And so I asked him, I said, you used to play with Rick Danko all the time. And,
yeah.
Tell me about the band. He said, well, Garth Hudson is the weirdest motherfucker I've ever seen in my entire life. And he started talking about how odd and unique these guys were.
He was the keyboardist, right?
He was the keyboardist. And he does this crazy organ solo at the beginning of my favorite band song called Chest Fever. But just hearing his stories and connecting was incredible. And I told him, when he used to come and he would play at a local bar in Piermont called The Turning Point, I would sneak in. I was 12, 13, 14 years old. And he used to stay in the apartment above the place and walk around the park during the day. I would cut class to go see him.
That's awesome.
I told him the story, and he thought that was great. It was definitely a really insane, memorable experience that I made happen, making it happen. And I met all sorts of amazing people. My roommate, for example, there flew in from Turkey. He was classical guitar player that flew in. So it was a really, really unique experience. I wrote a story about it, about his ranch. It's called The Fur Peace Ranch on my Thunderbird Ranch blog, which kind of details it, it was a great way to share this thing for sure.
Sounded like it was a guitar boot camp with a legendary teacher,
Absolutely. He actually gave me a guitar strap which I have right here, this really cool looking guitar strap, which I use every day. So
That's awesome.
yeah. And this hat is a hat that I used to wear in college. People would say, "What's tuna?" I would say,
Yeah,
"Oh,
yeah.
you know."
How did I mean his teaching? Did you pick up nuggets over those 4 days? Probably not only from him, but from the other.
He had four other instructors help him, and I picked up a ton. And what was cool is they would give you videos and like a book of everything you learned. So it took me 3 years to kind of grasp everything I learned over those couple of days, for sure.
Yeah, yeah. How long have you been playing guitar?
Since I'm 8, since I'm a little kid, been playing at open mic nights, and when I got to college, being a freshman with a band was the best way to get into the ball.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah, and I still play all the time. But again, it's a passion. I don't do it for anybody else. I do it for myself, and it's a great connector for sure.
So, Mike, how can people find these great websites? Where can you direct them to? Because the goal is to share music, right? I mean, it's share the community and get more people involved in learning about Hot Tuna now, right? Like, because I have the joy of talking to people. So now I'm going to be on a Hot Tuna streak for the next couple of days, right? Like,
I'll give you a couple of songs that are a good entry point for sure. I'm a bigger fan of their electric hard rock stuff than the acoustic, but actually this week on my hold music at York Analytical is Yorma's Water Song. That's our song. But next week we change to Dr. John's Frosty the Snowman.
Nice. So it's great that a company changes their hold music, so that it shows how dedicated you are to the sound.
Absolutely.
So what are give the URLs to the audience here for Thunderbird Ranch Ramble and Music People Project.
So ThunderbirdRanchRamble.com, you can plug that into Google, it'll come up, and MusicPeopleProject.com. Just plug them into Google, they come up. I have a lot of followers. I don't track the stuff, and it's just been it's become a labor of love. The Music People Project is going to culminate over the next year. I've got 22 interviews done. The goal is to get to 50, and I have a friend of mine that's going to make a documentary movie of it, and we're going to submit it to all the film festivals, not with the goal of making a nickel, but to have a music party at all of these cool festivals. And everyone that gets interviewed gets invited.
That's awesome. Well, Mike, it's been a pleasure, and I want everyone to check out the websites, and thanks so much for being on Rock and Roll Fridays.
Peace. Thank you.